you. Thank you. I have a question before we start. Raise your hand if you'd rather not feel good during the day. Raise your hand. Who would rather not feel good? Come on, I know you're out there. No, we all want to feel good. But so often we get, it gets buried in the day-to-day. We have our home, we have our family, we have our kids, we have our parents, we have the shopping. We have so many responsibilities. Often we forget why we do everything we do. And that's to be fulfilled, to be happy. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about managing our thoughts, because that's where it all starts. I've done several things, but I've always been interested in personal development. I've always read a lot, I've gone to seminars, I've listened to tapes. And back in the year 2000, I just realized I had all of this stuff in my head. And I said to myself, what good is it doing in my head? I got to get it out of my head. So I spoke to some friends, and I was directed to the jail out in Eastern Long Island, out in Yaphank, exit 67. Not one of the highlights that we had on the screen this morning, but nonetheless, I go there Tuesday mornings, and I teach a class in personal development to the men who are locked up for multiple DWI infractions. I go there every Tuesday morning, and I've done that for 16 years. I've hardly missed a Tuesday, and it was a turning point for me. I teach this class in personal development. We go from week 1 to week 12, and then back to week 1 to week 12. The men, they come and go, but they like the program. They shake my hand. They say thank you. It just fills me up to go there. And about 3 years into that, I started giving talks in libraries where Emmy met me. And I started off with one talk and led to another talk and another talk. And along the way, I wrote this book called Simple Happiness, 52 Easy Ways to Lighten Up. Anybody know anybody who could lighten up? Anyway, it's been the most exciting time of my life being out in the public talking about how to be happy. Something we all want, we all crave, but it gets lost in the back burner. We're going to talk about managing our thoughts. A lot of people think their thoughts are their life. This is who I am. That's how I've always done it. Our thoughts become our life. Really, what is a thought? It's just a thought. We have 60,000 thoughts every day. And often they're the same ones we had yesterday and the same ones we had the day before. It's just a thought. And if we can only let go of the thoughts that make us feel lousy and hang on to the ones that make us feel good, because we all said we want to feel good, our life would start to get better. It's just a thought. Because we also have what I call our natural state of mind, where there's peace and joy, tranquility, solutions to problems. My genius is over here. We all have it. We all have a natural state of mind, just like we all have our thought systems. The question is, how do you get to this natural state of mind where it's all good? Number one, you got to want to be here. You got to want to have a peaceful life. You got to want to have joy in your life. You got to want to have lower stress in your life. So many of us, we are stressed like a badge. That's all we talk about. Oh, if you lived where I lived, if you worked with the boss that I had, if you had the upbringing that I had, blah, 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 blah. It's all how bad my life is. Guess what? That's my life. So you got to want to be here, and you got to know what it feels like to be here. So let's practice feeling what it's like to be here. So what we're going to do is we're going to sit quietly. You can leave your eyes open. You can close them. And we're going to just focus on our breathing. We're going to focus on the physical aspect of breathing. You're going to breathe. It doesn't matter if you breathe through your nose or your mouth. You don't have to take deep breaths, just normal breathing. And focus on the physical aspect. Feel your lungs and diaphragm expand and contract. Expand, contract. A thought is going to come into your head. I wonder what we're going to have for lunch. It's going to happen. The thoughts are going to come. I shouldn't have done that. The thought is going to come. Notice it as a thought. Let it go and come to your breathing. Let's do that for a minute. Since I started giving these talks years ago, there's been a new development in psychology called positive psychology. So anyway, the prevailing wisdom is out of 100% of our happiness, 50% is genetic. We are born of parents. We have tendencies that we've inherited from our parents. Can't deny it. You know, if my father and mother were outgoing and the life of the party, chances are I've inherited some of those tendencies. And if my parents were shy and withdrawn, chances are I've inherited some of those tendencies. Now, see, I'm very particular in using the word tendency. A tendency. That's what we inherit. Tendencies. We're not locked in. See, scientists used to think that the brain was formed by the time we were 15 years old. Can't teach an old dog new tricks. That was it. By the time you were in mid-adolescence, your brain was formed. Now, they're doing more and more studies. They've come up with this term called neuroplasticity. We can change our brain. So we've got these tendencies. So anyway, we're going to do a little more on that. So we've got 50% of our happiness is genetic. 10% is our circumstance. Did I grow up in a safe neighborhood? Did I go to a school where learning was encouraged, or was it a bunch of hooligans? Was my family happy, or was it dysfunctional? So 10% of my happiness comes from my circumstance. And you know what the other 40% is? What I do with what I've got. 40% of my happiness is my business. Wow, that's a lot. So I'm not stuck. Even though I have these tendencies from my parents, that doesn't mean that I have to stay there. I can move ahead. I can make my life a little bit better. I read this book by a neuropsychologist, and he talked about how we can change our brain. And one of the things he talks about is he uses the expression, take in the good. Take in the good. You know, we see things in nature or around us. We see maybe a flowering tree in the springtime, or a bunch of tulips along the side of a road or somebody's home, and we remark how beautiful it is. Then we see maybe somebody walking a cute little dog, or maybe we hear a beautiful piece of music that we enjoy. He says, yeah, normally we notice it, but we don't focus on it. We just notice it, and we go on to the next thing, which is what we tend to do. Goes on to the next, on to the next. He says, take in the good. Take that good feeling, whatever it is, and really embrace it for 15 seconds. Really feel it deeply. You know, really experience the beauty, the pleasure that you see in what pleases you. He says that forms a synapse, and I'm not a scientist, I don't know what a synapse is, but it's something that fires in my brain to make me feel a certain way. And I've been programming all these synapses all my life through my thought systems. But I can change those if I want. I can start to see the good and take in the good. Every time I take in the good, I'm creating a synapse that's going to help me see the benefit, see the good the next time, and the next time, and the next time. So we can make changes in our brain just by being aware. Self-awareness is the bottom line, the starting point of all of this stuff. And then intention, it's got to be there. I got to want to tell myself, I want to have a better life. I don't want to be the same person next year that I am today. I want to have a better life. I want to experience more joy, more happiness, more good feelings. It's all there waiting. So take in the good. All of a sudden, you're going to see things that please you more often. The bad stuff is still going to be there, but it's not as important because you're focusing on your abundance. You're focusing on the goodness in your life, the miracles happening all around you. I give a lot of different talks, and one of the talks I give is 8 characteristics of happy people. And one of the characteristics is happy people are responsible for their own happiness. They don't blame anybody else. See here, this person over here was blaming the upbringing. Okay, a lot of people have a tough time. A lot of people weren't born with a silver spoon in their mouth. They can either bitch and moan about it for the rest of their life, or they could say, you know what? There's more out there for me, and sit in the second chair or the third chair. So it's your call. We're all accountable for our own lives. No blame game. I am the person that I am standing here today is the result of every choice I've ever made in my life. And those choices have to do with my self-talk. In my mind, I'm unbelievable. You should hear the self-talk from me. No, I'm just I'm kidding. We all struggle with it. We all have these negative, I was at a high school event, a leadership event out on Long Island a couple of years ago, and there was a number of facilitators, and a psychologist gave us a little prep for the event, and he told a story about this Indian tribe out west where the chief was sitting with the children of the village, and he was telling a story about that inside each one of us there are two wolves inside of us. One is the good wolf that is generous and kind and compassionate and sharing, and the other wolf is all the negative things, the selfishness, the greed, the liar, the dishonesty. And he says they're fighting all the time. They're at each other's throats, growling and snarling and scratching and clawing. They're always at each other's throat inside each one of us. And the little kid raised his hand and says, "Chief, which one will win?" And the chief said, "The one you feed." So we're feeding the good wolf or the bad wolf inside us all the time by our thoughts. So it's huge. We have such power to make our lives great. Anybody ever hear of the placebo effect? We know the placebo effect. It's like it's what happens when the pharmaceutical company is doing testing for a new drug, and they give, let's say they're testing for a migraine medication, and they get a whole bunch of people who have migraines, and they divide them in half. Half the people, they get medication that they're testing, and the other half of the people, they get something that looks just like the medication that they're testing, but has no active ingredients. It's inert. It's a placebo. And they go about their, take the medicine according to their, whatever they do. They come back months later, and they do the testing, and what always happens? A number of the people who took nothing got better. How'd that happen? They believed they were taking the medicine. Belief is such a powerful tool. See, we know that. We know the placebo effect. We know a lot of things intellectually on an academic level. But do we use that placebo effect to make our lives better? Do we? Probably not. See, it's the belief. And again, it's the self-talk. It's what we tell ourselves. It's what we believe about ourselves of what's possible. Because those beliefs become my life. How do I change my beliefs? I don't like what I believe about myself. Well, change it. How do we do it? How do we change our beliefs about ourselves? Number one, you could do affirmations. Affirmations. You could write down something that you want about yourself. I'm so happy and grateful that I have an abundance of good friends and acquaintances. I'm so happy. I have this one that I say to myself. It's about money. I didn't make it up. I heard it from somebody else. I say, I'm so happy and grateful that money comes to me in increasing amounts through multiple sources on a continual basis. Why not? I got a bunch of sources. I'm so happy. See, I start off with I'm so happy and grateful. You make believe it's happening. I am so happy and grateful that money comes to me in increasing amounts through multiple sources on a continual basis. It's happening. I've been saying that for years. Something else here. If you saw this is my goals. At the jail, we write, it's a whole progression. One session is a goal setting. And I suggest that they write down their 3 main goals and laminate them and keep them in your pocket. Now, if you saw this, it's like tattered and ready to fall apart. I did this years ago. And I kept it in my pocket, and I stopped it after a while. And just like 2 months ago, I looked at my night table, and I saw this thing. And I'm reading my goals, and the first one says, I make my living speaking and writing. And all of a sudden, I realized that I'd sold my business. So this goal had come to fruition. I'm not going to be an investment advisor anymore. I make my living speaking and writing. Powerful stuff. What does it cost me? I had to put it on a computer. I went down to the copy store, 50 cents. We have so many things that don't cost anything that we could be doing to make our lives better. One is the placebo effect. Build our belief about what's possible. Keep saying it. You keep saying how bad things are. Guess what? Why don't you say how good things are? I'm so happy and grateful that my family life is wonderful, that my children love me, that I have a wonderful relationship with my spouse. You know, all of a sudden you start to believe it. You start to say it. See, a belief is nothing. See, people think beliefs are true. A belief is nothing more than something that we keep telling ourselves. Everybody doesn't have the same beliefs. I keep telling myself, that's my belief. It's true for me. If I want it to be better, I can make it better. Right? You know, make up something for yourself. I'm so happy and grateful that I've achieved my perfect weight. I'm so happy and grateful that I have a car that's reliable. Whatever it is that you want. And make that your dominant thought. Because if you think the opposite, oh, that's never going to work. That's not going to work. It's never going to work. So you got to build our belief, that placebo effect. Little by little, you build the belief that it's possible for you. Here it is. This is proof. Took a long time. Happened. So what? It's a long life. That's another chapter in my book. It's a long life. We got a lot, you know. So what? It takes a little time. It's worth it. And gratitude is the place to start. You know, we want to have a better life. Hang on to thoughts of gratitude. Gratitude is the place to start. People ask me, Jim, I want to be happy. How do I do it? I say, well, two things you got to do. Number one, you got to want to be happy and understand and believe it's possible. And number two, gratitude is the place to start. Tomorrow morning when you wake up, throw your legs over the side of the bed and stand up. What's your thought? It could be, thank God I can get out of bed by myself. You feel good right away because you've got this mundane ability to get out of bed. A lot of people can't get out of bed by themselves, and they wish they could. Grateful. You feel good. You walk down to the bathroom. What's your thought? Don't tell me. It could be, thank God I've got indoor plumbing. We take it for granted. Be grateful. How do you feel when you're taking something for granted? I never heard anybody say, yeah, I'm taking that for granted. Doesn't make any sense. It's just neutral at best. But we live our life so much in neutral versus gratitude, which brings joy and happiness. It's around us all day. Down here in Long Island, we had the Superstorm Sandy a couple of years ago. We had no power for a week. I live up in the North Shore. We got inconvenienced. It wasn't like the devastation that occurred on the South Shore. But we had no power for a week. So now, when I turned that switch and the light came on, what do you think I said? Hey, power! Now I got to remind myself when I hit that switch and the light goes on, yeah, power. I could be grateful for little things. I use the hot water in the shower as a trigger to remind me to be grateful. We had no hot water for a week. Now that hot water hits me, I'm grateful for the hot water. I feel good. Why not? Why take it for granted? I walk down to my closet, take out some clothes that make me look good. Maybe not that good, but I'm grateful for what I've got. I may want a better suit, but I'm grateful for what I've got. See, see, we got choices all day long about how to respond to the things that come my way. So we just got to decide. We've got to decide, I want a better life. And then you do the things that we talk about. Just monitor your thoughts. Gratitude is the place to start. All of a sudden, your life can start to get better. And I've had a great time here today, and I thank you. Thank you. Now you can worry about what's for lunch.